The Meeting of the Gods. Hi guys, here Asher. Today we will continue with DanMachi, but this time we won't talk about a specific character. Today we will tell a curious and interesting reunion that Freya and Hermes had during some events in Volume 5 of the light novels. This scene was not animated for the first season of the main show, so it is not a spoiler, unless of course you want to start reading the light novels and see for yourself the differences between the main source and the anime adaptation. To put it in context, this meeting occurred shortly after Bel and his companions were lost in the middle floors of the dungeon for several days. Hestia, Hermes and the others were preparing to go on an emergency rescue mission. But before going on that mission, Hermes had another place to visit. That place was the Tower of Babel, the house of Freya, the leader of the most powerful familia. But well, without more to say, let's start. A golden moon hung in the sky, the sun had completely set, the streets were full of people enjoying the atmosphere of the city. Thousands of bright spots surrounded it, and in the center of the city a building loomed over the central square. A tower stood over the entrance to Babel's dungeon. The goddess Freya enjoyed the beautiful view from the highest point of the tower, but abruptly looking away from the city, she turned to another room, opened a large wooden door and entered. The room was adorned with long shelves filled with expensive and luxurious items. Her favorite servant Ottarl, and another god, Hermes, with a member of his family were also gathered there. Freya asked her guest if she had kept him waiting too long, to which Hermes replied in the negative, and apologized to her for taking up some of her valuable time. Hermes was seated at a strange table. He greeted her with a smile and a jubilant voice. However, Osvi could not hide her nervousness. Freya continued her walk, then stared at them both, and took a seat at the table with Ottarl right next to her. Her every move was elegant and captivating. She wore a black dress that revealed her beautiful curves. As she slid into the chair, her considerable bust swaying. Osvi was captivated by Freya, and blushed scarlet before averting her gaze. Although his follower had been completely captivated by the goddess of beauty, Hermes only continued to smile in his own charming way. Both gods were seated with their respective companions just behind them. The first to initiate the dialogue was Freya. She chose to avoid any idle chatter, and asked directly what was going on and what was the reason for Hermes' visit. She went straight to the point, while keeping a very confident smile on her lips. Hermes replied, "As I'm sure you are already aware, Bel Crenel has not returned from the dungeon. Hestia and myself are on our way to help him." She didn't even flinch, and encouraged Hermes to continue speaking. Hermes continued, and clarified that the reason for his visit was that he wanted to make a request. Then Freya asked why he bothered to come to her. He replied that he had noticed how Freya had protected Bel at the last meeting of the gods. All this was when Loki was trying to find out the reason why the little rookie had grown up so quickly. But Freya stopped her, by arguing that it was forbidden for them to investigate personal matters of their children. During that meeting, Freya had all the male gods present under her spell from the beginning. Her beauty was powerful enough to make them go into trance and obey. However, Hermes should have been under her spell during that meeting as well, but apparently he was not. Back to the conversation between the two gods. Hermes continued speaking and said that she could not blame him for being interested in the boy, because if Bel was someone worthy enough to receive the attention of Freya herself, he could not help but feel interested. Hermes explained to Freya that even though he was under her spell at that meeting, he wasn't under her spell enough not to notice that there was something fishy going on in the atmosphere. In other words, he was acting. Freya finally replied and whispered, "Well played," as she remembered the charming god's performance. Hermes explained that he had noticed Freya's interest in Bel, but didn't think anyone else had noticed it until now. To put us in context, Freya's recruiting style was well known. Once she had scouted someone she wanted, she would immediately move in and act, but this time it was different. She was being very careful. That's what Hermes wanted to emphasize. Freya eventually accepted that Hermes was right, that it was useless to continue with appearances given how much he knew, and encouraged him to continue without further delays. Hermes adopted a serious expression, and said, "I have no intention of playing with your toy, I just want to see with my own eyes what he is capable of doing." His expression of seriousness, from one moment to the next, changed to that of a beggar in the street, and he continued, "So please don't harm my familia Freya-sama." Freya was sincerely surprised by Hermes' request. She kept silent for a moment before looking down at him, like a pathetic worm unworthy of the filth he lived in. She held that expression for a while Hermes was on the verge of tears. Since the Freya familia was the strongest in the city, if she decided to wipe out a rival familia, like Hermes's, well, that familia would be annihilated in an instant. This was the reason why Hermes was in that meeting with Freya. He wanted life insurance for his familia. Although that was not his only motive, there was something else. Freya could tell that, she knew he wanted more than just a taste of Bel's power. She kept silent to keep the rival god under pressure, but after a while she sighed and said, "This is absurd." Freya realized that trying to find out what Hermes wanted was a waste of time. Subsequently, the goddess accepted Hermes' request, but it was also clear to her that she had to keep an eye on him. Hermes was incredibly relieved and gratefully dedicated many words of thanks to Freya, even telling her that from now on, he would be indebted to her and would do her any favor she asked. However, in the middle of these words, Freya interrupted him. She stood up, stopping her charm abruptly, put her hand on Hermes' shoulder and said, "It would be wise of you to remember this, the only one who can play with him, is me." After that, with goosebumps and a trembling voice he said, of course, I swear to you." Freya nodded at his words and advised him to remember well what she said. Hermes' face shone with sweat, as the goddess stood up with a beautiful smile on her lips, then she gestured towards the door with one hand, and nodded her head briefly, as if to say, "You may go." Hermes immediately accepted the proposal and said a quick goodbye. Freya watched him and Osvi walk out the door. Osvi had been intimidated by Ottar's presence, and did not say a word as they left. Hermes however began to laugh at himself, and muttered, "For a moment I thought I would die." Once the god Hermes and Osvi had left, Ottar took the floor and said to Freya, "Is this acceptable to you?" In spite of everything he said, "There may be things going on that we are not aware of. This is just my opinion, but that god is very suspicious," Ottar concluded. Freya laughed softly to herself at Ottar's frank warning, and then said, "I'll take care of that when the time comes." Then she stood up and walked to the window to admire the view. Freya continued and replied, "Recently Ishtar has been watching me more than usual. I would like to avoid any petty investigations. If Hermes wants to do something, that's fine. As long as Freya knew that Hermes would not hurt Bel, that was enough for her. At least for now." The beautiful goddess continued to admire the view, and let a faint smile show on her face when she saw the people gathered in the central square. They were Hermes, Hestia, and the rest of the rescue team. And well, that was all for today. I hope you liked the video about this little story of two of the most charismatic gods of Danmachi. If you liked it, please leave a thumbs up, share the video and leave your opinion in the comments about this character or other characters you would like me to make a video. I'll be reading your feedback. Also check the description of the video, if you want, and you can support the channel economically. That would help me to bring content more often. Best regards and see you next time.